Right. Welcome to A Growing Concern. It's the end of the year, and it was almost the end of the world, but that didn't happen. So we're going to move on as if it didn't happen, and we're going to talk a little bit about fluoride. We were going to talk about this more later in the year, next year, but some developments have happened here where we need to talk about it right now and get a bug in people's ear that they need to get busy with spreading the word and providing the support that the people who are trying to put a stop to adding fluoride to Portland's water, that they're putting their efforts out there and they need a lot of help. So we have the Executive Director of Clean Water Portland here, that's Kim Kaminski.
Hello.
Thank you for coming to the program. I was hoping to get you on during the September, October, but things were just pretty rugged.
Well, thank you for having me.
All right, and what we're going to do is we're going to talk about kind of what led up to the most recent decision by the City Council. And this started back in, well, it started way back before September, but it started gaining a lot of momentum in September. So if you just kind of want to give us the high points and what led us to the point where we're at right now, it'd be great.
Sure. I found out about this in probably mid-August when I got a phone call from a reporter.
This meaning adding fluoride.
Adding fluoride.
Right.
I got a call from a reporter that asked me, what do I know about City Council pushing fluoridation of the drinking water? And I was a little tentative, and I said, well, I don't know. What do you know? And I basically said that I know that they've been trying to fluoridate the state of Oregon for over a decade. And I know that they're also pushing the City Council. So we talked, and I realized that they were moving forward very rapidly because prior to this phone call, the proponents of fluoridation had been lobbying and pushing for this policy long before we ever heard wind of it.
Behind closed doors. Yeah.
It was a very behind closed doors. It was a lobbying effort. They had a high-paid lobbyist, Mr. Mark Weiner, who actually worked for Randy Leonard. He worked for Mayor Adams. He worked for Charlie Hales, and I believe he worked for Steve Novick. I'm not certain of that, but he is really in cahoots with the majority of City Hall and basically did his job to get most of them elected. So what happened after that started very quickly. I was actually in the airport with my family. I was coming home from my mom's funeral, and the plane was boarding, and one of my children were at this end of the terminal, my other one was on that end, and I was on the phone, and it was just chaotic. And so I started making some quick phone calls, and we pulled together a group of people and set the wheels in motion to form the group Clean Water Portland, which has been spearheading the effort to fight fluoridation at the city level since mid-August. So fast forward to September, the City Council had a hearing, and prior to the hearing, we had 3 out of 5 City Council members, Randy Leonard, Sam Adams, and Nick Fish, state their support for fluoridation prior to any public hearings whatsoever. So they had the public hearings as required by law, but essentially those hearings were a sham because it was already a done deal. They had 3 out of 5 City Council members. So the hearing took place, and it was extremely well attended. We had so many people come out, testify, fill the chambers, and say that they don't want this policy. The proponents of fluoridation got to, they had this expert panel, and they were allowed to talk and talk and talk literally for over 2 hours. And when we got up to speak, we got, each of us got 3 minutes. So we asked for an expert panel. We asked for an opportunity to be at the table, and we were denied. So prior to all of this, this goes back way back when. So a year ago, Oregon Citizens for Safe Drinking Water met with the City Council members just to find out what was going on the fluoridation front. And Amanda Fritz met with us. Dan Saltzman met with us. Nick Fish did not. We did meet with his aide. Randy Leonard would not meet with us. He referred us to his David Schaff, who's the head of the Water Bureau. And David Schaff assured us that the Water Bureau has too many things on their plate. They're dealing with cryptosporidium and the covering of the reservoirs and so forth, and that he assured us that fluoridation would not happen under Randy's watch. Mayor Adams would not meet with us. So we made it clear to all the council members that if anything starts to happen, that we would like to be made aware of that. Well, that never happened. So the proponents of fluoridation started lobbying. They hired Mark Weiner, and they started lobbying. We were never informed. So all of this took place, again, behind closed doors, and then all of a sudden it was announced that they were going to fluoridate our drinking water, and then Randy Leonard promptly went on vacation for 2 weeks. And this was at the end of the summer when most people are on vacation, children are out of school, we should be relaxing and enjoying ourselves and our friends and our family. And all of a sudden we were put into basically emergency mode to pull together a coalition of different organizations, because many Facebook pages started popping up and people didn't know what to do. It was all very disorganized. So a group of us formed Clean Water Portland, and we brought everyone under the umbrella so that we could work as a team instead of all of these disconnected organizations. So the city council went forward and they voted in favor of fluoridation, as was expected. And so what we did at that point, when Nick Fish announced that he was going to vote in favor prior to any public hearing, we filed an initiative. And an initiative, what an initiative does is it amends the city charter, and our initiative would prohibit the addition of chemicals that are meant to treat the water instead of making the water potable. And also, it would prohibit the addition of chemicals that, for purposes of treating humans, that have contaminants that exceed the maximum contaminant level goals set by the Environmental Protection Agency, EPA. So effectively, what that would do is it would prevent fluoride chemicals from being added to the drinking water, but it would also prevent other chemicals that are meant to treat humans and not treat the water.
And this would be a permanent. If the city charter, that would be permanent. They couldn't just resolve to get rid of it.
It would amend the city charter. It would be very hard to change that. So that's why we did that. And so as time went on, what happened is that the initiative was set to go on the ballot in May of 2014. And Randy Leonard announced that, again, out of the blue, that they would start putting fluoride chemicals in March of 2014. That was 2 months before the citizens would be allowed to vote on the issue. So by that time, they would have the infrastructure. They would have spent the $5 million on the contract to build the infrastructure. They would have gone through the permitting process, the zoning, etc. And it just seemed really disingenuous to me that he's pushing this through before the citizens get the chance to vote on it. Now, the citizens of Portland have voted 3 times against fluoridation. And so it was interesting to me that the city council took it upon themselves to make the decision when in the past the decision has always been left up to the people. And when you look at other cities around the state of Oregon, it generally goes to a vote of the people. It's not something that's made by an administrative body.
And other states as well.
And, well, that's another issue, but we can talk about that in a moment. It's the layer upon layer.
Right.
And so that when he said that it was going to go forward in March of 2014, we filed a referendum. And so the way the initiative differs from the referendum is the initiative amends the city charter to prevent the addition of fluoride chemicals. The referendum takes the ordinance that the city passed that says we shall fluoridate, and it refers it, as the name implies, it refers it to the voter. So that's the referendum. So in order to get the referendum on the ballot, we had to gather 20,000 signatures in less than a month. And that's That's a hefty challenge. That's no small feat. And having gone through that process, I can tell you that it was grueling. And it took a lot of organizing and a lot of effort by a lot of people. We had over 300 volunteers, and we had a lot of people on the street because people were outraged. And they were upset that they didn't even know that this was happening, and all of a sudden it seemed like it was a done deal, and a lot of people didn't know what to do. So, you know, I've gotten a lot of thanks from people who are just happy that, you know, that we have this group who has taken the initiative to take on this issue. We were able to gather over nearly 44,000 signatures. We only needed 20.
236, I think it was. 326, something like that. I memorized it a while back. It was 218% of what you needed.
Well, it was way more than we needed.
Yeah, it was
way more than we needed. And I think a lot of that was that people were upset by the fact that they rammed this through without public input and without people even knowing what was going on.
Right, and many of them were probably even favored fluoride. They just wanted to say in it.
Well, actually, a lot of people that do want fluoride were very upset by the process as well, and they agreed that the people should be allowed to vote on it. So that was a very interesting. That was interesting to me.
People from both sides could meet in the middle.
Right.
And that's exactly what happened.
With the process, and I think that the process is something that is really significant, especially what happened yesterday. But just to go back for a second, there was a two-part process. The city looks at the signature sheets. We had 6 boxes of signature sheets.
I remember that.
And yeah, it was momentous. And it was quite the feat because I really feel like the proponents of fluoridation and Mark Weiner and City Council and the people that were pushing this really gambled on the fact that we wouldn't be able to gather that many signatures in such a short amount of time. Because really there's only been 1 or 2 referendums that have actually gotten on the ballot because you have to gather so many signatures in such a short amount of time. It's really not an easy thing to do.
So that 30 days is mandated into the process.
Yes, it is. So the clock starts ticking right away.
Right away, it did.
Yeah, and so we were able to do that with verve, and we turned in the signatures, and the city first looks at them and invalidates, you know, things that are obviously wrong, and they invalidated less than 3% of our signature sheets. And then it goes to the county. Typically, this was a November election, so the county was swamped. So what the county did was they farmed it out to the Secretary of State's office, and the Secretary of State found that over 80% of our signatures were valid. And normally there's more like a 60 or 70% validation rate. So not only did we turn in way more signatures than we needed, our validation rates were off the chart. So we did a really amazing job, and I want to thank all the volunteers that showed up and all the people that went out on the street and in the trenches and got those signatures and spread the word. And it was really a great example of the community coming together and doing something that is so important. I mean, we're talking about our drinking water, and it was a great, humbling, wonderful experience.
Well, it was the people in the streets did a great job, but I must commend the folks like Kristen who was given the orientation that went through all the different things that could go wrong and all the different things you had to make sure that were right, and it was all emphasized in such a way that I'm not surprised that well over 50% were good, which is really all you needed.
Well, we had a great team of people. We had well, I could name names, but there was just a wonderful group of people, and toward the end that we were verifying the signatures with registered voters in the county. We were looking at signatures. We were crossing off people that we knew we were only limited to the Portland city limits. So if you're in Gresham and you live on this side of the street versus that side of the street, you're not technically a resident. Yeah, and then
people didn't know.
Right, right. And then there's unincorporated areas of Washington County where people have a Portland address, but they're not technically in the city of Portland. And so there's all of these interesting things that, you know, honestly, we're learning by the seat of our pants. This is the first time I've ever run a campaign like this. And so it was a really wonderful, extraordinary learning experience for me. So,
I think it might have been for the city of Portland, too.
yeah.
They're going to have to figure out something else.
Yeah, what's the phrase? Don't ever doubt that a small group of people can change the world.
Yeah.
Well,
they
here we are.
Well, they did. So, you know, I was curious before we move on. During all the machinations of the meeting in the backyard, in the back rooms, and finally hearing about it through the Oregonian and the things that they did, Randy Leonard taking 2 weeks off. Did the media cover any of those machinations? Because they talked. I know they talked about that this fluoride vote was going to come up for a vote, but I'm just wondering if the media covered any of the actually anti-democratic machinations that were going on.
There were some reports of that, not as good as I would have hoped. And, you know, when you compare the mainstream media to community media such as this, you know, the mainstream reduces it down to sound bites, and they reduce a whole process down to a paragraph. And sometimes what I noticed about the Oregonian, for example, is sometimes they would print stuff online, but it wouldn't appear in the hard copy. So I found that to be very interesting. So the mainstream media has been good and bad, but I think that this process and the fact that we were so successful at gathering the signatures has brought some credibility to our organization and brought some attention to the issue that people are finally starting to look and say, wow, maybe this isn't such a good idea after all. Maybe fluoridation isn't as good as it seems. You know, we've had decades of propaganda telling us, oh, it's safe and effective and it's good for kids and it's going to be the silver bullet to help the poor children that don't have access to care. And I think that those are issues that we really need to look at, because now with the internet, and you know, there's good things on the internet and there's bad things on the internet, and you have to spend a lot of time to sift through the good and bad. You know, as a researcher by profession, I look at everything that's out there, and then, you know, eventually it comes around to a consensus. And then that's when you're able to make a determination. And there's tons of studies out there on both sides. And you have to really weigh the evidence. And when you look at the precautionary principle, if you have evidence out here that says, oh, this is great, and you have evidence that says, oh, this is bad, and then you research all of it, and then you come to the middle and say, well, maybe it's good and maybe it's bad, you have to err on the side of caution. And I think that the fluoridation issue is a perfect example of that. Custom made for this. Yes. Because
There's no great studies, and we're going to get into that probably in a bit too. There is no definitive studies by the either the EPA or the CDC or any of the organizations, government agencies. There's nothing that's definitive.
Well, there's a lot of conflicting evidence. I mean, we have studies even by the CDC that says it's topical and not systemic. I mean, for a long time we believed that you had to ingest fluoridation for it to be helpful. We now know that by brushing your teeth, that's the best benefit. By ingesting it, the thought used to be, well, it incorporates into the saliva and it bathes your teeth throughout the day and so on. Well, we now know, well, even if that were true, I think that we have to look beyond the teeth and look at a holistic view of our bodies. You know, how does it affect our kidneys? How does it affect our neurological system?
Bones.
How does it affect our endocrine system, which is huge? We know that it suppresses thyroid function. We know that it accumulates in the bones, especially for people that are low on calcium and magnesium. We know that when you look at the body as a whole, that the negative effects are probably going to outweigh any positive benefit it's going to have on the teeth. Now, if we have one less cavity or 25% less cavities versus having bone cancer or decreased thyroid function or decreased IQ or any number of effects, I think that we really need to weigh the pros and cons. And what we're advocating as an organization is that there are better ways to address the problem of children's dental decay than fluoridating 100% of our drinking water. We have lots of programs available in the city of Portland that deal with children's dental decay, that provide access to care regardless of immigrant status, regardless of income levels. I know just from making a few phone calls last week that there are a number of programs available, and part of the problem is that people aren't aware of them. There's paperwork involved, and families with that aren't educated or that are low income, or they're working families, or both parents are working, or they just don't have the time or the resources to go through the paperwork, or they don't speak English. And there's, you know, some programs out there for Spanish speakers, and there's other programs for other languages. But the bottom line is, when you're living in poverty and you're trying to make it from day to day, and this is the very demographic that we're addressing. You know, we're saying we need to fluoridate the water for the minority children, the poor children, the people that don't have access to dental care. These are the same people that have that access and have those programs available, but they're not taking advantage because of various reasons. So
part of it is they don't know about them.
They don't know about them. They're not, you know, and that's an issue. And we want to, you know, take the $5 million that they're going to use to build the fluoridation facility, and the $500,000 a year that they're going to buy the fluoridation chemicals, and take that money and put it toward better education, better access, and provide a real solution to the question of dental care for children, instead of putting a toxic waste byproduct in the water and calling it good.
Mm-hmm. Even though it isn't. And that is just talking about this issue around human beings as the center of the universe, whereas 1% of that might go into people, the rest of it goes right out of the environment. And that is an issue that I don't think is that they talk about this, the pro people even talk about it from that standpoint.
Well, that's an excellent point, because even according to the American Water Works Association, we drink 1% of the water, and literally the rest of it goes down the drain. And, you know, I think about that when I take my children to the swimming pool. We have a swimming pool full of fluoridated water. We wash our cars with it. We wash our laundry with it. We flush it down the toilet. We water our gardens with it. We feed our livestock and our pets with it. 99% of it we're not drinking. So every time the proponents of fluoridation say, they have this quote, "For every dollar you spend on fluoridation, you save $38 in costs." Mm-hmm. Well, I would say for every dollar that you spend on fluoridation, 99% goes down the drain. Mm-hmm. So I think that that's really important, because it's going into our ecosystem. We know that fluoride compounds have negative effects on salmon at as little as 0.2 parts per million.
It messes up their migration, I think, is what
it does. It does, and it messes, you know, and with their skin, it's extremely toxic to amphibians, which are bioindicator species. And, you know, they're recommending that we fluoridate at 0.7 parts per million, and we're showing negative effects at 0.2 parts per million on salmon. That's over 3 times the amount where we're having negative effects on aquatic life. And we're only drinking 1%, and the rest is going into the watershed.
Mm-hmm. So that dollar that we're spending on fluoride is actually helping to offset the millions that we're spending on salmon recovery, possibly.
Right. And talking about the cost issue, I want to say that the chemicals that we use to fluoridate our drinking water, it's not pharmaceutical grade chemicals. It's a product. What the city of Portland is recommending is something called hydrofluosilicic acid. And it's a byproduct of the phosphate fertilizer industry. And they scrub it from the smokestacks, because they're not allowed to emit these chemicals into the air. They can't dump them in the ocean. They can't dump them in the river. They can't put it in a landfill. They have to pay to dispose of it in a toxic waste facility, which is extremely expensive. So if it's in the air, it's a pollutant. It's in the water, ocean, river, landfill, it's a pollutant. But if we sell it to a municipality to put it in the drinking water supply, the water supply,
they can put it in the water.
All of a sudden, it's not a pollutant. Yeah. And they don't have to pay to dispose of it. In fact, they can sell it and they sell it for cheap because they want to get rid of it, but they still make money from the sale of it. So I think that that's really interesting when we're doing a cost-benefit analysis.
We want to talk about that from that standpoint, which is one of their major pinchers of trying to get people to accept it is the cost-benefit for the children.
Exactly, and that's not even considering when you're talking about cost-benefit analysis, when we're looking at long-term effects on people's overall health, that we're not considering the cost of treatment and care and hardship and heartache and health effects that people suffer as a result of this. Now, you know, they will say, well, if, you know, this was so bad, people would be dropping dead all over the place. But, you know, look around. I know several members of my family who have had cancer. I know several members of my family who have had Alzheimer's disease. The National Academy of Science came out with a report in 2006 that said, is there a correlation between fluoridation and exposure to fluoride and Alzheimer's disease? We don't know.
Nobody's done the test.
Is there a correlation between fluoridation chemicals and Down syndrome? We don't know. The bottom line is, and they did find that there's a potential association with bone cancer. There was a study in 2006 out of Harvard School of Dentistry that also found a very high level of association between exposure to fluoridated water and bone cancer in young boys between the ages of 5 and 10 when they're going through their growth spurt. And the bottom line of the National Academy of Sciences report said, there's a lot of things that we just don't know. We really need to do further studies. Those studies aren't being done in the United States. We have tons of studies coming out of China that show impact on children's IQ from as little as 0.2 to, you know, high levels of fluoride exposure. But again, those studies aren't being done in the United States. Why is that? You know, why is it that the studies are being done are only being funded that show no association?
Because those are the only people that can get the funding. Because the ones that want that will come down in favor of it. People that want to, from what I understand, people that have actually done the studies or have come out against it have had devastating effects on their careers.
That's, yes, I've heard that too. I have some anecdotal evidence about that, but I don't, you know, I don't have any solid proof.
On the internet, there's a little bit. No, but you're talking about the need for testing brings us up pretty much up to date to the present time, which with what just happened in the city council this week, and why you think that's not right.
Well, as I said, they tried to push through fluoridation at the beginning, and there was a unanimous vote by City Hall that they would start the process, which forced us to file the initiative, which would amend the city charter. And then Randy Leonard said they would start fluoridating 2 months before the initiative would be allowed to go to a vote of the people. And so we filed for a referendum, which would put that ordinance on hold. We gathered the signatures, and then Friday afternoon, this past Friday afternoon, I found out that the City Council put it on the agenda for yesterday, Thursday, December 20th, to discuss the issue of moving the date of the referendum, which was originally scheduled for May of 2014, which would be the same day that the election for the initiative would take place. They wanted to move that from May of 2014 to May of 2013. And Randy Leonard proposed it. Mayor Adams agreed. Nick Fish was on the fence, sort of. I think we knew how he was going to vote. But Amanda Fritz had the guts to stand up and say, this is not going to serve the democratic process. And she called early on for a public debate and time to explore the issues, because it is such an important issue. This is our drinking water. It's all of our water. And she had the guts to stand up and say, we need to have a public discussion. We need to have a public forum. We need to have a community discussion about this issue, because there's pros and cons and there's conflicting information, and we need to have time for the voters to be educated so that they understand what they're voting on. Mm-hmm. And Dan Solzman came out and said moving this election would be a violation of the public trust. And because when people signed the signature sheet, it said right on there, May of 2014. So everyone, all those 44,000 people that signed those signature sheets thought that the election was going to be taking place in 2014. Mm-hmm. And he also said that to move the date of an election to favor one side is not okay. It is violation of the democratic process. And I agree with both Mr. Saltzman and Amanda Fritz.
Well, it's been a violation of the democratic process all along. I mean, it may not so blatant.
Well, it has been. So we found out on Friday afternoon that it was going to be put on the agenda for Thursday. Well, normally city council meetings are held on Wednesday. And they had an extra, I don't know what you call it, a special session on Thursday so that they could address this issue. It was the only thing that was on the agenda. And so we found out on Friday. So we had a very short amount of time to mobilize people and get them down to City Hall. We planned a rally. It was pouring down rain.
It got rained out.
It was freezing cold. And it's in the middle of the holiday season, you know, again, children are out of school. People are supposed to be spending time with their friends and family. It's the solstice, it's Hanukkah, it's Christmas, it's Kwanzaa, it's the end of the year, end of the year and the end of the world.
I don't think it qualifies as a conspiracy theory to think that that was their agenda.
Well, I definitely think it was very well planned, and I think it was very well calculated. And the fact that Randy Leonard was pushing this through, it was his last vote before the end of his term. Yeah. It was the last city council session of his term, and the same with Sam. And it just really struck me as being really odd that at the end of the year, when they have so many important issues to address, that they would bring this up to move the date a year ahead of what was supposed to be scheduled. And, you know, I don't know how much time the other side had to plan, but we basically had, you know, the weekend. Of course, I'm having to work over the weekend during the Christmas break, and my children are home, and we want to spend time together as a family. And now I'm forced to organize and plan and work. And so we go in on Thursday. I was down at City Hall at 1 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, and we get a call from Randy Leonard, and he all of a sudden is feeling a change of heart and wants to let us have a panel of people speak. Now, this is an hour before the hearing is supposed to take place. So at the very last minute, within 1 hour, we got together and we got a panel of people down there. We were calling people, can you come down here? Can you take off of work? Can you please show up? Can you come up with a testimony in less than a half an hour? And come.
I bet you did it, though.
We did it.
Yeah, I bet you did it. I've never seen such a committed group of people in my life as the folks that are trying to protect their water.
Well, I have to say that I'm really humbled and proud to work with such a wonderful group of people. We have really smart people, we have strategic people, we have committed people, we have a number of people that are just, you know, tell me what to do, I just want to help. How can, you know, and it's been a challenge for us. Like, we've literally had hundreds of people call and say, how can I help? And to organize them and put them in a place that, you know, they like to do editing and they like to do, you know, to utilize their talents in a way that's meaningful for them and it's helpful for us. I mean, that in itself is a huge job. And I just want to say thanks to all of the volunteers that have stepped up, and we're going to need your help.
And continue stepping up.
Continue stepping up, because we're going to need help gathering signatures for the initiative. We have an election in May. It's May 21st of 2013. We have 5 months to get out the vote. We need to get people registered to vote. We need to educate people. We need to get people to the polls. And it's not going to be an easy task. But I really feel confident that just given what we've done in this short amount of time and the fact that people are really upset that they're just trying to ramrod this through the back door, and they're pulling these sneaky political tactics in order to accomplish what they're trying to accomplish. And this is our water. And I think people are going to stand up and they're going to rise up, and now is the time.
You think the city council might learn from the most recent national election with the Republicans, that they pulled so many shenanigans with the voting and all the different things that they did, and it slapped them down, I think. And I think the same thing is in operation here, whether or not the corporate media covers it very well.
Absolutely, and I think one main reason why people signed our petition in the first place was because they were so upset about the lack of democratic process. People weren't given notice. People weren't given opportunity to be heard. That's a basic due process violation. That's a constitutional right. The opportunity to have notice and to be heard. And people were extremely upset about that. And so again, people came out of the woodwork and they signed our petition. They gave us donations. They helped us gather signatures. And, you know, 3 months ago, there's a whole group of people in Portland that I know now that I didn't know. And now I have this huge family that is just, it's just been a wonderful community experience.
And so many of these folks were activists in other campaigns and activists in other issues that are totally parallel with water. You know, they weren't necessarily social justice issues or environmental issues. It all kind of fell in the same basket. And people like, I know folks from BARC that were involved in it. The BARC did not take a stand as far as the campaign, but people that work for them and support them support the water, because, you know, Bull Run watershed is in Mount Hood National Forest. Yeah. And so folks jumped on board. I was part of the reason, well, not part of the reason, but one of the things you wanted this thing to go so much further in time for was because you wanted to take studies. And I guess since you may have mentioned that yesterday in the panel you guys put together, but I guess that's probably not even going to be talked about now. You can't do a study in 5 months and put it out there. So is that pretty much gone by the way now, and you're going to concentrate on educating and getting people set up to vote?
Well, I don't think it's totally by the wayside. I think that we can still push for what we were pushing for initially. We wanted to do an independent scientific panel because of all of the conflicting information. And all of we also wanted a panel to explore the effects on the Portland area in general, well, specifically. And because Portland sells water, the city of Portland sells water to, I think, 19 different water districts. Gresham, Tualatin, Beaverton, several. West Slope Water District.
And they have no voice in this.
They have absolutely no voice. And we were getting tons of calls from Gresham and all of these surrounding communities. It's really a regional problem. And they said, you know, I want to vote. I want to sign the petition. And they couldn't sign the petition because they're not within the city limits of Portland. They don't elect the city council, and they can't vote on city ordinances, and they can't vote on city referendum or initiatives.
Right. That's what I was told when I took the orientation, is if you didn't get a ballot to vote for mayor, you're probably not in the city limits to vote on any of these issues.
That's correct. So it's going to
That was a good way to kind of, you know, cut it off.
Right.
It worked for me, and it was a few people that I talked to.
Well, and that's a shame, because a lot of people that are affected by this don't have opportunity to...
Thousands.
They didn't have notice, and again, a due process violation.
There was even an article in the Portland Tribune about how some of the towns surrounding us were upset about it.
Oh, yes. And, you know, Randy Leonard, who's the head of the Water Bureau, didn't even have the courtesy to call the mayors of these cities and the heads of these water districts to let them know. I mean, it was just made a done deal, and I think that the outlying water districts were extremely upset about that.
Mm-hmm. That would make sense. Well, we've eaten up all but 18 minutes of the program here, so we pretty well covered this pretty much. And so where Clean Water Portland is standing right now is probably after the first of the year, you're going to be collecting signatures for the initiative that's going to be dealing with the city's policy.
Mm-hmm. To amend the city charter.
City charter, that was the word. And you're going to be doing that, and at the same time, you're going to have to be trying to gear up and educate people about the what is going on with fluoride, whether people come down yes or no. They need to get the information and sift through it. So
what we would like to ask people to do is to understand that we have a referendum election coming in May 21st of 2013. So we want to do a lot of education and outreach. We're looking for volunteers to come on down, help us gather signatures for the initiative, which will take place in May of 2014. But we really want people who are...
But you have a year to do, I think. For the initiative, you have about a year.
Unless they change the date on it.
Yeah, right. So you have until, say, January of 2014 to collect the signatures? Something like that?
Correct. Correct. That would be for a May 2014 election on the initiative that would amend the city charter. For the referendum, we're going to go in full campaign mode starting in January and just really trying to reach out and educate people on the issue. Come on down to our office. I can't tell you the address because they sold the building where we were and now we have to move on top of everything.
Oh, I hadn't heard that. That was a good spot, really centrally located.
Well, our new office is not too far from that. I think it's at 10th and Madison, or it's centrally,
real close,
yeah, close in
Two
southeast.
Blocks east, yeah.
So we want people to educate themselves on the issue. We want people to talk to their friends and family. You know, every time I go to the bank, I talk to people. When I'm getting my hair cut, I talk to people. When I'm on the phone, I talk to people. And I just want people to spread the word. You know, every time I say, did you know they're trying to fluoridate our drinking water? And I always get the response that, no, I didn't know anything about it. And, you know, the bottom line is most people don't know. The other thing is they put it on the May election for 2 reasons because, well, 4 reasons. They didn't want us to have the time to do fundraising and education and outreach. May is a off-year election.
Season,
it's an odd year. Most major things happen in even-year elections. This is odd year, and it's May. It's not November. There's also the Portland Children's Levy is on this election, so I think that they're banking on parents who probably think that fluoridation is a good thing. We have a lot of people that have moved here from other places and who grew up with fluoridation, and they don't see anything wrong with it. I mean, I think a lot of us are under the impression that, well, if they're putting it in the water, it must not be so bad. Or I grew up with it and I'm fine. You know, I think that there's just this attitude where people kind of go with the party line and believe what they've always believed. And so that's, you know, that's another issue. And then I think also just the fact that they wanted to give us, you know, again, less time to organize and so on. Mm-hmm. I saw a bumper sticker the other day that I really liked. It said, "Don't believe everything you think."
Right. Yeah, it's one of my favorite. I've seen that before, and I wish I could have one because it's probably one of the most clear bumper stickers I've ever seen. Because it's not saying don't believe everything you think. It's just don't believe everything anybody thinks.
Yeah, and I think that we all really, we've been told a lot of things over the years. We've had decades of propaganda on the fluoridation issue. We've all grown up with it. I grew up with fluoridation. I never gave it a second thought. I never really explored the issue until 2005. They were trying to mandate it at the state level, and I thought, oh, I don't know anything about this, and I started doing. It doesn't take a lot to find out that there's two sides to the story, and again, going back to the precautionary principle, when you're looking at one side saying, oh, it's totally safe and effective, and the other side saying maybe it's not safe and effective, then you really kind of have to weigh, when you start reading the studies, and when people read the studies for themselves, and read the studies, don't just read the internet, stuff that you find on the internet, because there's a lot of crap out there. But I really encourage everyone to look at this issue, think about it for themselves, think on their own, don't believe everything you think, and don't believe everything you've been told. Question authority and think for yourself. Right.
I mean, it's your vote. Make up your mind. Don't have it made up for you. And like you say, we've all been brought up with 60 years of this propaganda, and it's for the children and all this, and they're trying to push people's emotional buttons that you're not doing all that you can for your child and everything, and that's a really superficial part of the situation here, the issue.
Yeah, and again, I just want to reiterate that we want to acknowledge that there are much better ways to address the issue of dental decay, especially for children and especially for minority populations and people living in poverty. We can provide access to education. We can provide education on dental hygiene. We could provide access to care. We can provide toothbrushes. We can have programs in schools where the kids actually brush their teeth after they eat lunch. You know, that doesn't exist right now. My son attends a school, my son and daughter attend a school where over 85% of the children are eligible for free or reduced lunches, meaning they're living at or below the poverty line. And that's the type of community that we need to address, because I know that a lot of children in that school aren't getting proper access to dental care. They don't brush their teeth. They don't have good diets. They don't understand the correlation between what you eat and your overall health and the health of your teeth, the dental care, flossing your teeth, basic things that, you know, again, when you're living in poverty and you're struggling, that's just one more thing on your plate. And if we can provide that kind of education and access, we can go a long way at preventing this in a meaningful way, not just putting chemicals in our water and calling it good.
And nutrition is a huge aspect of that.
Absolutely.
Even though it doesn't seem like it on the surface, it's a long range thing. But the people who are on poverty level maybe can't, in some cases, afford the high nutrition foods that they need, and that is where the money could be spent to educate them on how to provide decent food for the table with not a lot of money.
Sure.
And it's not an easy thing to do. Well, I see we're down to 12 minutes here. We can continue the conversation, and we will. And if we want to open up the phones, you want comments or questions, this is an issue that we're going to be talking a lot about starting next month again. I'm going to try to do a program a month, at least every 6 weeks or something on this, and bring in different aspects like we did this before. We brought in an ecologist, a fish biologist, brought in a dentist. We'll bring in some more people, and some of those as well. Francis Quint was it Miller, who came in and talked about the aspect of the poorer communities, how this affects them. There's many aspects of this, and we're going to be bringing up, like she said, you know, there's a lot of information online, and there's updates going on too as well. I saw that on the fluoridealert.org website. There's a button for I think news updates, and they're coming up all the time. The newest one I saw was you remember what city it was? It just said no more. It was a new city that just came up that was doing it, and they said no, we don't want to do this anymore.
Actually, there's been quite a few.
Quite a few, but there's been one just recently.
Well, Wichita, Kansas actually just said no. They were trying to fluoridate Wichita, and it was a 60 to 40% margin that said no, we don't want it. And I think as more studies come out and more people understand the issue, the more they reject this process, because it's not effective. I mean, we look at cities across the country like Detroit and Chicago and Kentucky, the state of Kentucky, and several cities that have been fluoridated for decades, and they have extremely high rates of dental decay and are in dental crisis.
I saw how the statistics can be manipulated, because they were saying that Portland has terrible high percentage of cavities in this city, but as it turns out, they were taking the average of the whole state, and Portland was actually pretty good. So
yes.
You know, you not only got to sift through the different information, but you got to watch how statistics are being bent as well.
Well, right, and you can look at the same data, and exactly. So they're looking at Oregon statistics and saying there's this crisis because we have 70% of the third graders that have experienced dental cavity experiences. But when you look at the city of Portland, we're quite a bit lower than that. And in fact, if Portland were a state and we look at all the states across the country, we're actually doing really well, even compared to states that have been fluoridated for decades. So
they're really manipulating the data there. I see we got a phone call. I was hoping some folks would call in and comment, or, you know, even if you're for it, you know, we need to have that discussion, and now's a good time to start it. We'll get the first caller on the air.
Hello?
Hello, you're on the air. Welcome to the program.
Hi.
Hello, you have a comment or question?
Well, I have a question about where can a person with a low income with a very limited amount of money find decent dental care and a bite guard?
A what card? Bite card?
Bite guard.
Oh, bite guard. Well, I wouldn't have any idea. You familiar with any of that?
Well, I think that people that are eligible for the Oregon Health Plan, there's different plans. My understanding, I'm not an expert on this area, but there's different plans where some plans do have access to dental care, and so I would call the Department of Health Services and ask that question to them. I'm sorry, I could probably research that and let you know. I don't know off the.
Mm-hmm. Well, you can contact Clean Water Portland. That's cleanwaterportland.org, and to follow up on some of this information, the phone is on the internet where you can give them a call. We don't have that up, but we do have the website cleanwaterportland.org, and that's a little bit too fine of a question. I don't really have the answer to that either as well.
Actually, you can call me. I can research that, and my phone number is 503-421-9197, and we can look at that because I think it's an important issue because there's a lot of people that don't have access to dental care, and especially. Yeah, that's definitely.
Did you get that number written down, caller?
I did, and I actually have researched the Oregon Health Plan, and my understanding is there's no dental care provided for adults.
Well, that's the problem. That's an issue that we obviously need to address. And we could take the $5 million they're going to spend on fluoridation, which probably isn't going to help the majority of people, and put that into programs that are really going to target people that need access to care.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, I'll give you a call at your number that you provided.
All right. Well, thank you for the call.
After Christmas, please.
Thank you.
All right. All right. And if you get any other calls, that'd be great. I was thinking there could be viewers out there that might have ideas towards how to educate people. There's going to be, maybe you could bring it up at your neighborhood meetings. That I'm sure the different neighborhood groups have meetings. You could bring that up there, and brainstorm ways how obviously get a hold of Clean Water Portland. But there's no reason why folks can't come up with creative ideas on their own. And a lot of creativity, I'm sure, was shown collecting those signatures to get 43,000 of them when they only needed 20. There was a lot of creativity being used by folks who took the initiative to do this. And I urge folks to use their energies in a creative way and find ways. Like we talked about here before we did the show, that Clean Water Portland needs support in many different ways. They need donations. They need people to show up and collect signatures. There's just there's a whole range of things that people can do to step up to the plate and to put this to a vote. And if people voted in, well, then people voted in. But they should have the right to vote. And they also should have the time to sift through the information, but that has been taken away from us, and there's no backing up on that one. I take it.
It's pretty much a done
deal.
So the interesting thing about that is that if, and I don't think that this is going to happen, but if people vote yes on fluoridation and they start implementing, spending the money and the zoning and using the resources and putting this in place, then our initiative goes will be on the ballot in May of 2014.
A year later, right.
So it could be that they spend all this money and then the people vote to amend the charter to keep these chemicals out of our water. And so it's just, and that was Amanda Fritz's point, that why rush this when there's the initiative on the ballot for May of 2014? Why are they moving the referendum to May of 2013 when this could very well trump the decision that's made in this coming May?
Well, it seems to me it's a political decision because they're going to figure that, well, if it passes in 2013, money will be spent, and that will be used as a shoehorn against people to say, well, we need to vote yes on this because we've spent this much money.
Exactly, and it's already in place. And once the fluoride chemicals start flowing, harder to take them out than to keep them out. And so that's our effort right now. So I want to encourage everyone to register to vote if you've moved.
First up.
If you've moved, if you've changed your name, if your signature has changed over the years, register to vote. And if you live within the city of Portland especially, that's crucial. We have a May 21st election. The ballots are going to go out May 3rd. And not only do you need to vote, but you need to turn in your vote. You need to turn in your ballots. And also we need help educating and spreading the word. Talk to your friends. Talk to your family. Come down to our offices. It's on 10th and Madison in Southeast Portland. And we need donations. We need to pay our rent. We just hired an office manager to help us with all the millions of things that come in and out the door. We need printer cartridges. We need paper. We need to pay for the electricity. We have a lot of expenses to keep this rolling.
So much, and there's just no way that folks can do that on their own. They need the community, which this is a community issue. Need the community to step up to the plate as many ways as they can.
Yeah.
So that's going to be starting. I'm sure you're not going to be doing much, and we got a couple minutes here. You're not going to be doing much until after the first of the year, but then you're going to go into gear at that point.
Well, we're probably going to be working over the weekend, and next week. But yeah, I think that in January we're going to kick off the campaign to start gathering the initiatives. We're going to kick off the campaign to start educating people about the referendum that's coming in May of 2013. And I also wanted to say, we're all volunteers. We're working, these past 4 days, I was working 12 hours a day. We are just on the clock all the time. None of us are getting paid. I said we just did hire an office manager because we need that position. We need the administrative aspects to be covered. But apart from that, all of us are completely volunteering our time. And we have a core group of people that are volunteering. And we also have hundreds and hundreds of volunteers that stepped up and helped us gather signatures. And it was just an amazing effort by the community to rise up, to protect something, to protect our Bull Run water, to protect our drinking water, and to protect something that is essential to our lives.
I see we have a call, but we don't have enough time. I mean, you might put the call up and give them 20 seconds or something, but we're down. Now we don't even have time. It's over with. Too bad. I apologize to the caller. We got 40 seconds left, so I think we pretty well covered it as much as we're going to cover it for now. I appreciate you coming in, Kim.
Sure. Well, the caller can call Clean Water Portland.
Right.
Go to our website, cleanwaterportland.org. Sign up to get our email alerts. And Jim, thank you so much for having me on the show.
Thank you for coming on. This is great. It was good getting all that background because I kind of knew it, but the way you talked about it, pieced it all together and filled it in. So I have a much better understanding of how sleazy our city council has been in this issue. So that's it for now. Well, that's it for the year, actually. So we'll see you next year. Thanks for tuning in. Thank the crew.